the mysterious death of the Cranberries' lead singer Dolores O'Riordan. The 90s rock star died in a London hotel Monday at just 46 years old.
She was the voice of a generation, the woman who gave us Zombie and Linger, songs that still echo through our speakers decades later. But behind the piercing vocals and ethereal melodies, Dolores O'Riordan fought battles most of us never saw.
Well, she was still recording music to this day and was recording this week in London when she died in what police are calling an unexplained death.
Her life was a collision of extraordinary talent and devastating pain.
The world around you is mad. So basically he said, get the hell out of the planet, go hide somewhere if you can. So I went to Ontario then, and the only thing you have to worry about up there is bears and bear poo.
And it ended far too soon in a London hotel room. This is the story of how a girl from rural Ireland conquered the world, only to lose herself in the process.
It's rare that there's a female rock singer and her voice was unique. There's not many people that sound like her.
The girl from Ballybricken, Dolores Mary Eileen O'Riordan, was born on September 6, 1971, in a place about as far from rock stardom as you could imagine. Ballybricken, a tiny townland in County Limerick, Ireland, was all green fields and tight-knit communities. She was the youngest of 7 children in a devout Catholic family, and money was tight. Her father, Terry, had been seriously injured in a motorcycle accident before she was born, leaving him unable to work. Her mother, Eileen, held the family together through sheer determination. Growing up wasn't easy. Dolores later revealed she'd been abused as a child by someone she trusted, a trauma that would haunt her for decades. Music became her escape. She'd sing in the church choir, her voice already showing that distinctive quality that would later captivate millions. At home, she'd listen to her mother's records, everything from traditional Irish folk to mainstream pop. By her teens, she was writing her own songs, pouring her feelings into lyrics that were raw and honest. She wasn't trying to be a rock star back then. She was just trying to survive, to find some way to express what was happening inside her head. Little did anyone know that this shy, troubled girl from the Irish countryside would soon be standing on stages in front of thousands, rising to stardom with the Cranberries. In 1990, everything changed. A local Limerick band called the Cranberry Sawus needed a singer after their original vocalist left. Dolores, just 18 years old, showed up to audition with a rough demo she'd recorded at home. She'd written lyrics to one of their instrumental tracks, a song that would eventually become Linger. The 4 guys in the band, Noel and Mike Hogan, Fergal Lawler, and later with Noel taking charge of songwriting alongside Dolores, knew immediately they'd found something special.
Going to a hotel, live in a hotel room, just do press and sing and...
That voice, simultaneously fragile and powerful, with its distinctive Irish lilt and yodeling quality, was unlike anything else on the radio. They shortened their name to the Cranberries and got to work. By 1993, they'd released their debut album, Everybody Else Is Doing It, So Why Can't We? It took a while to catch fire, but when it did, it burned bright. Linger became a massive hit. Its melancholic melody and Dolores's achingly vulnerable vocals capturing something universal about heartbreak and longing. Suddenly, this band from Limerick was everywhere. Then came Zombie in 1994 from their second album, No Need to Argue. This wasn't a love song. This was anger, pure and raw, written in response to an IRA bombing in Warrington, England that killed 2 children. Dolores's voice transformed from delicate to fierce, practically screaming the chorus. The song became an anthem, shooting to #1 across Europe and cementing the Cranberries as one of the biggest rock bands in the world. They were selling out arenas, appearing on magazine covers, and living the dream that most musicians never get close to touching. For a girl from Ballybricken who'd grown up with so little, it must have felt surreal, the weight of fame. But fame isn't what it looks like from the outside. Sure, Dolores was traveling the world, making incredible music and earning money she'd never imagined as a child. But the pressure was crushing. The Cranberries went from obscurity to global superstardom in what felt like minutes, and Dolores, who'd always been sensitive and introverted, struggled to adjust. She was the face of the band, the one everyone wanted to interview, photograph, and dissect. Every word she said was analyzed. Every outfit was critiqued. The shy girl who'd once found comfort in music now found herself trapped by its success. The schedule was relentless, tour after tour, album after album, with barely any time to breathe in between.
They happen every day to people. Like, you know, as we sit here right now, in the next 1 hour, something could happen to you or me that could change your life forever.
The music industry in the 90s was brutal, squeezing every drop from its biggest acts before moving on to the next thing. Dolores later admitted she felt like a product, not a person. She was homesick constantly, missing Ireland and the simplicity of the life she'd left behind. But there was no going back. Too many people depended on the Cranberries continuing. Too much money was at stake, too many expectations to meet. And then there were the darker issues bubbling beneath the surface. The trauma from her childhood hadn't gone away just because she was famous. If anything, the stress of her new life made it worse. She began experiencing severe mood swings, periods of deep depression followed by intense energy. She didn't understand what was happening to her. And in the 90s, mental health wasn't discussed the way it is today. You were just supposed to power through, keep performing, keep smiling for the cameras. So that's what she did, even as she was falling apart inside. The exhaustion was real too. Imagine singing your heart out night after night, pouring your trauma and pain into every performance, then being expected to do it all over again the next day in a different city. Dolores's voice was her instrument, but it was also deeply connected to her emotions. When she sang, she wasn't just performing. She was reliving every heartbreak, every moment of pain. That takes a toll, and by the late 90s, the cracks were starting to show. Personal demons and mental health struggles. For years, Dolores suffered in silence, but her mental health struggles eventually became impossible to hide. She was dealing with depression that would drop her into dark holes she couldn't climb out of for weeks. She'd later be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a condition that explained the extreme highs and lows she'd been experiencing for years. During manic episodes, she'd be full of creative energy, writing prolifically, and feeling invincible. Then the crash would come, and she'd be unable to get out of bed, consumed by hopelessness and despair. She also struggled with severe anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from the she'd endured as a child. For decades, she'd kept that secret locked away, but secrets like that don't disappear. They fester and grow, affecting everything from relationships to self-worth. Dolores eventually went public about the abuse, a brave decision that she hoped might help others. But reliving the trauma publicly came with its own set of challenges. Her relationship with alcohol became problematic too. Like many people dealing with undiagnosed or poorly managed mental illness, she self-medicated. Drinking helped numb the pain temporarily, helped quiet the thoughts that wouldn't stop racing through her mind. But alcohol and bipolar disorder are a dangerous combination, amplifying mood swings and making everything more unpredictable. Friends and family grew concerned, but addiction is complicated, especially when you're famous, and people around you might benefit from keeping you working rather than getting you help. The music industry didn't make things easier. There's this romantic notion of the tortured artist, the idea that great art comes from suffering. But that's nonsense. And it's dangerous nonsense at that. Dolores was creating incredible music not because of her pain, but despite it. She needed help, not admiration for her ability to turn trauma into art. The pressure to keep producing hits, to maintain the Cranberries' success, meant there was never really time to properly address her mental health. The show had to go on, and Dolores kept showing up, even when she was barely holding it together. What made it particularly hard was that she often didn't feel understood. Mental illness can be invisible, especially when someone's good at hiding it. Dolores could walk on stage, deliver a powerful performance that moved thousands of people, then go back to her hotel room and fall apart. The public saw the rock star. Very few people saw the woman who was drowning, the collapse of her marriage. In 1994, during the height of the Cranberries' fame, Dolores married Don Burton, the band's tour manager. He was Canadian, older than her, and seemed like stability in the chaos of her life. They had 3 children together, Taylor, Molly, and Dakota. For a while, marriage and motherhood seemed to ground her. She'd always wanted a family, and being a mother gave her purpose beyond the music. She tried to balance it all, being a rock star on stage and a mom at home, but that's an almost impossible tightrope to walk. The marriage lasted 20 years, which by rock star standards is practically forever. But lasting doesn't mean easy. Dolores and Don separated in 2014, and the divorce was finalized in 2016. While neither of them aired too much dirty laundry publicly, it was clear the relationship had been strained for years. The pressures of fame, constant touring, and Dolores' mental health struggles had taken their toll. It's hard to maintain any relationship when one person is constantly on the road, struggling with undiagnosed bipolar disorder and dealing with past trauma. The separation hit Dolores hard. Despite the problems, Don had been a constant in her life for 2 decades, and suddenly, he wasn't there anymore. She had her children, and by all accounts, she loved them fiercely. But the dissolution of her marriage triggered another downward spiral. Depression deepened, the drinking got worse. She later admitted that the period following her separation was one of the darkest of her life, and considering everything else she'd been through, that's saying something. Legal troubles and the air rage incident. On November 10, 2014, just as her marriage was falling apart, Dolores was involved in an incident that would make headlines around the world, but not in the way her music usually did. She was on an Aer Lingus flight from New York to Shannon, Ireland, and things went terribly wrong. According to reports and court documents, she became disruptive, allegedly headbutting, spitting at, and kicking police officers who were called when the plane landed. She apparently stomped on a police officer's hat and resisted arrest. It was shocking and sad in equal measure. This wasn't the Dolores O'Riordan that fans knew. The details that emerged painted a picture of someone in crisis. She'd been drinking, and her mental state was clearly unstable. Some reports suggested she'd also taken medication, a dangerous combination with alcohol, especially for someone with bipolar disorder. The incident resulted in charges of assault, and she faced potential jail time. But when the case went to court in 2017, the full picture became clearer. Medical evidence was presented showing that Dolores had been experiencing a severe manic episode triggered by her bipolar disorder at the time of the incident. Her mental illness was finally, publicly, undeniable. The judge accepted that she'd been unwell, not malicious. She was ordered to pay a fine to the Irish court poor box and to approach the injured police officer to apologize, which she did. No conviction was recorded, essentially acknowledging that this was a mental health crisis, not a criminal act. Dolores was deeply embarrassed by the whole thing. She issued public apologies, expressing genuine remorse for her actions. But the incident also served as a wake-up call. She began taking her mental health treatment more seriously, working with doctors to find the right combination of medications and therapy. For a while, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, she was turning a corner, fighting through darkness. The years following the air rage incident saw Dolores genuinely trying to get better. She was more open about her mental health struggles, discussing her bipolar diagnosis in interviews, and trying to reduce the stigma around mental illness. She talked about the importance of therapy and medication, encouraging others who were struggling to seek help. In some ways, she was turning her pain into something potentially positive, using her platform to help others feel less alone. The Cranberries reunited for their final album, Something Else, released in 2017. It featured acoustic versions of old hits alongside a few new tracks, and there was something bittersweet about hearing Dolores' voice, older and weathered but still uniquely powerful, revisiting the songs that had defined her career. The band toured again, and Dolores seemed happier, healthier. Fans were cautiously optimistic. She was also working on new projects outside the Cranberries, including collaborations with other artists. Music had always been her therapy, the one place where she could truly express what was happening inside her. Even when everything else was falling apart, she could write, she could sing, she could create. That never left her, even in her darkest moments. But mental illness isn't linear. Recovery isn't a straight line upward. You can be doing better, taking your medication, going to therapy, and still have bad days, still have episodes, still struggle. Dolores was fighting, but it was a fight that never really ended. The final years and last recordings. By late 2017 and early 2018, Dolores was working on new music. She was in London, recording vocals for a project called DAR, a collaboration with Andy Rourke and Ole Koretsky. There was also talk of a new Cranberries album. She seemed to be in a productive phase, excited about the music she was creating. Those who worked with her during this period said she was professional, focused, and still possessed that incredible voice that hadn't diminished despite everything she'd been through. She was also rebuilding her personal life. After her divorce, she'd had a few relationships that hadn't worked out, but she seemed more at peace with herself. She was close with her children and spoke often about how much they meant to her. In interviews from this period, there's a sense of someone who'd been through hell but was determined to keep going. She wasn't naive about her struggles. She knew the fight with mental illness would be lifelong, but she was fighting. In January 2018, she traveled to London for a recording session. She checked into the London Hilton on Park Lane on January 14th. She called home to speak with her children. She seemed tired, but okay. Nothing suggested what was about to happen. Sometimes that's how it goes, isn't it? Life just continues, ordinary and routine, right up until it doesn't. January 15th, 2018. On the morning of January 15th, 2018, Dolores O'Riordan was found dead in her hotel room at the London Hilton. She was 46 years old. The news broke quickly, spreading across social media and news outlets worldwide. Fans were devastated. Fellow musicians expressed shock and sadness. The music world had lost one of its most distinctive voices, and it had happened so suddenly, without warning. Initially, there was speculation about the cause of death. Whenever someone with a history of mental illness and substance issues dies unexpectedly, people assume the worst. But the truth, when it emerged from the inquest, was somehow both simpler and more tragic. Dolores had drowned in the bathtub of her hotel room. She'd been drinking, her blood alcohol level was more than 4 times the legal driving limit, and she'd lost consciousness in the bath and slipped under the water. The coroner ruled it as accidental drowning due to alcohol intoxication. There was no evidence of self-harm or suicidal intent. It wasn't a deliberate act, just a terrible, preventable accident. She'd been fighting her demons, and in a moment of weakness or pain, she'd turned to alcohol, something she'd struggled with for years. And this time, it killed her. The inquest revealed empty bottles in her room and heard that she'd been recently in good spirits about her music, which made the accidental nature of her death even more heartbreaking. Her body was returned to Ireland, to Limerick, where thousands lined the streets for her funeral procession. She was buried at Caherelly Cemetery, near Ballybricken, where she'd grown up. The girl from the Irish countryside had traveled the world, touched millions with her music, and in the end, came home. The music world lost someone irreplaceable that day. Dolores O'Riordan wasn't just a voice. She was a force, someone who turned pain into beauty and vulnerability into strength. Her death serves as a stark reminder that mental illness and addiction don't care about talent or success. They don't care if you've sold millions of records or if people love you. They're illnesses that need treatment, understanding, and support. Dolores fought her battles bravely, but sometimes, tragically, the fight becomes too much. Her legacy lives on in the music, in the countless lives she touched, and in the conversations her openness about mental health helped start. She deserved more time, more peace, more happiness, but at least she left us the songs, those timeless pieces of her soul that will never fade.